an artist and a theorist working with sound culture, voice, and questions of agency. He's author of many influential books, among them Background Noise, Perspectives on Sound Art, Acoustic Territories, Sound Culture and Everyday Life. And most recently, he published his book Sonic Agency, Sound and Emergent Forms of Resistance, a very hopeful and powerful book on how sound can support political transformation and how listening can support togetherness and collectivity rather than individuality and solitude. And while reading this book, it really hit me how these thoughts are connected to our festival theme, persistence. And following our invitation to contribute to the discourse program, he developed the idea of this living archive that he's presenting downstairs next to the counter throughout the week, named The Other Citizen. So if you haven't seen that, please go have a look, take some time. And the performance he's presenting today is connected to the material from this archive. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. I know you know the system is rotten. Why should I explain it? All this that holds the body, all this that perpetuates the colonial crimes and the nagging hopes. Shall I give it a name so as to register it in the books? This never-ending commodity fetish, this closed school, this debt paid in shortness of breath and states of loss. This is what we confront today, the state of loss to which we are bound as citizens. I know you know there are the borders needing to be crossed, the boats to be launched without permission, with the toothbrushes shared and the cardboard mounted over windows or smashed by wood found in the alley, with the music that plays into the night, making our ears ache with promise and possibility. I know you know, and yet knowing does little, what with the watery graves, the housing made and the housing taken away, the logic of extraction that trades in bone. Suddenly, the boy crosses the room, comes up onto the stage, and continues with his argument. His hand in the air like a broken wing, like a pale branch, like a persistent wish. Enough is never enough, it seems, what with the guns shoved down our throats and the screens that animate our suffering. This is what we confront here today, the state of loss that we must exit. So I take back the life given to me and my friends. I take back the breathlessness given to my generation. I take back the streets and the neighborhoods and the forgotten paths over which we have walked. This is ours now, and I give it the name, the open city, like a boat trafficking the promise of the open body, this one that may love beyond the limits. We are not afraid, we are not afraid. With his hand in the air, like a broken wing, like a pale branch, like a persistent wish. He walks beside me, this boy. I follow his movements, the dry earth under our steps. With the bright sun giving direction along the paths and into the strange emptiness, the movement of talk and the wishing for more it contains, the more found in each other, allowing the body to shudder with what it cannot hold, the emptiness. This is what he talks about, this voice that grips the air, that steals a breath. As we walk, he beside me, along these paths that become a material for the work of openness, to negotiate the new private they and we are starting to feel. Here, along the dry paths that wind in and around the city, with the dirt that collects in his shoes as he steps into and out of, working together this liquid modernity into a construct, a thing to hold, to pass around, a grammar of intimacy they piece together. How far can these steps take them? To thread, to weave, to mend, to escape into the movement of being side by side, the shared step like a force that drums itself across the surfaces and then into the depths, to tie itself to the heart-pounding drive of wishing for more. This is the story I wish to tell, and which is carried in this arm, this muscle, the body like a paradigm of life that works its way into cracks and that takes courage from the networks of alliance and support they make. It is a story about the state of loss and the open city, this polarity, this combat zone into which some fall, and that forces another narrative, if possible. He breaks off his thumb against the street. He is overtaken by the loneliness which they must share, passed from mouth to mouth and carried in the knees as his friends run, beating the body into pieces. The day drops its blue clothes and they steal into the back rooms, beer on their breath and across the chipped enamel in spilt pools that collect the dreary minutes. The boy tries to speak all this angst, bringing it into language so it may bend, like twigs broken off and shoved under windows through which they climb, especially when the desire is too much and there is only the groping for what might overtake the emptiness. Fill it with the crazy joy of doing what they can as the doing that may unwork the operations of this that grabs them, the state. This is how the days occur, washed over by a bright light and the pace of being together under the push and pull of restlessness and of capture, of back rooms and dry paths. The wishing for more collected into knots, held under the heart, forcing the legs to push down against the streets and the neighborhoods, and which they craft into rhythms that give pace to the shared loneliness between them. This generation of the new global order, this motley crew, this rat salad, this panic in Detroit, pressing lips into clumsy kisses and the endless walks which they work into spells of liberation. This going nowhere that becomes its own territory, into which they fall. To break the emptiness of the private streets with another dimension. The walks that take the heart and plant it into the ground, drumming out the possibility of other principles. As they open the veins for the open city, made in the back rooms, the dry paths, the basement clubs, the vibrations under the steps as they walk, in and out, across and through, crafting the leftover pieces into a dirty work. He beside me, the dirt in his shoes, in search of another narrative. We are not afraid, we are not afraid. This is the story I wish to tell, and which is carried in this arm, this muscle, the body like a paradigm of life as it drives one to endeavor again and again to carry the open city across the dry paths and into some kind of future. Isn't it so, my dear? Isn't it so, my dear? With the standing up and the lying down, all these steps like a drunken composition, the listening out for and through each other, with the self-made constructs of stressed matters and queer resistances, of clumsy kisses and persistent thoughts that unwork the new private, that takes the breath, that steals the bone, that orders the senses. He is caught, held by the broken neighborhoods, down the dry paths and through the maze of empty buildings, seeking solidarity with what may come. The boy who stands up and who holds on, that captures the emptiness as a material. He puts it in his shoes along with the dirt and the wishing for more, pushing it down into the step, making the ground shake with secret messages, to evoke the open city and to push back the state of loss, this walking, this hiding out, that he and his friends do in making these networks of alliance and support, which is a type of dirty work, the work of loneliness they must do together. This is the scene of survival and friendship, the movement of a grammar of intimacy endlessly made, and which he announces under the streetlights, his hand in the air like a broken wing, like a pale branch, like a persistent wish. Where might such loneliness take them as they negotiate this state of loss? As the boy stands up and the others hang on, where might these walks lead? Along the edges of lost neighborhoods, into cracks and the narrative of the open body, figuring itself into the black fragility of broken languages, into each other, this social body that pieces together what it can and which carries this arm, this muscle into today, this open space that we make. Isn't it so, my dear? Isn't it so? This is what she sings about. She, this other one, who is also there as part of this movement of hanging on and of shared loneliness. The disobedient culture of togetherness. She who lives on the other side of the world, who is the echo of the other, he and she, who come to occupy this fragile network of alliance and support, each a figure reworking the conditions for what some may call a parallel polis. This is what she sings about, the open communities who perform an art of survival, a black art, a black song, to black out the emptiness with the drumming of the open body as well as the open mouth, as it sings, as it breathes what it must, as it pushes its way in through the state of loss. I am without a body, I am without a thought, I am without, I give it away, what I have left. I cannot hold it, I cannot keep hold of all that is taken away already. I am without, I stand, I fall, I lie on the street, I cut this arm which extends from me and which is already captured. I give it over to the system that takes all and that will consume this arm as raw matter. I am without, along with these others who gaze into the gray dark and that disappear already, ghosts of the nation. She searches for a loose power, like bandages to wrap the arm, the wrist, the head. It is everywhere, this pressure. It moves along the streets to crack the surface, along the gray zones and peripheries, taking, holding, no longer along dry paths under the sun, but elsewhere, on the gray streets and under the empire. In the depths of the cuts, this blackness delivers. This state of loss that is a system, that is a logic, that is a hand that takes them. It fills her mouth, it becomes her voice, this emptiness, this erasure that traffics in blackness, the project of disappearance. She chokes on it, she spits it out in word over word, these words that drip with absence and that tries to pass through the new economy of extraction toward this other territory. I stand, I fall, I pick up pieces found in the gutters, trapped in the linings of the streets, along the dead surfaces and closed windows. I wash the streets with these hands rubbed raw, the uncertain labor of finding refuge in the shadow. Take me, take me. I pry back my skin to escape all this policing, that crawls into the pores and the mouth, that empties the body. My body is a whole, hollowed and evacuated. I am without. I fall into a secret mouth and across the tongue and over the gray ground where the shadows offer little. The night of the disappeared that ghosts the streets and the language that I speak, filling the mouth with nothing but a vibration. I am a broken fragment, pressing, breaking, dripping through this liquid modernity into the gutter, mixing with the others, the fluids of the exiled and the lost, the crushed and those tossed into the ocean with their fluid bones, hidden and yet pouring in, flooding the streets that echo with silence and with those that gather behind the curtains, the disappearance they claim as their own and that fills my mouth. She sings with dark vibrations, turning us towards the blue-black, this twilight where day and night no longer hold, to give way to the emergence of something, a fragment, a humming. What might I call it? This emergence, these vibrations, and these rhythms that aim for the other territory, that break the body into pieces and which collects into the work of the open. He and she, as they try to hold the emptiness in between lips pressed, breathless. From the boy who walks under the sun and she who fights her way through the disappearance, these states of loss around which they work to figure the paradigm of life, the blue-black fragility and the grammar of intimacy to be found. That is what they make and what they move into being, an alien future to destitute the world, this construct of the breathless, becoming amphibious to survive the liquid order, becoming the dirt in the shoe which may crawl out and take root across the dry paths, migrating this dirt, this alien future, he, she, the H as a ladder and the S as a dagger, love and rebellion. This is what they struggle to make, this dirty work to rework the new private into constellations of movement, and which she sings about deep in the back of the throat with that persistent wish for more. This is the story I wish to tell, the story that is told to me again and again, from the boy who drummed on the ground as we walked together, to she who tried to sing her way out of disappearance, each nurturing the open body, this body that may love beyond the limits and that labors to construct the open city, where the other citizen is to be found, who lies down for the common good and who stands up for the uncommon notion, taking all those days of walking together, bringing them down into the social arena of today, this soft, persistent tone that we may hear as the beginning of something, friendship. The friendship that takes the bandages and the bruises, the rhythms of the networks of support, to craft a set of passageways, then a window, then a door. What we may call the open house. Let us enter, let us make our way into this house, which is a type of festival. The door is open and we enter. I can already smell the rain dragged in by the others. It is not so much a crowd as it is a small gathering, with the open door and the dogs outside. We take a step and something moves, with the open door and the open bottle, the strummed guitar and the lyrics passed around. A collection of books on the table, scratched with telephone numbers and poems, burnt matches, the kitchen alive with cooking, the old pots and spoons, like tools for the craft of togetherness, and the chairs pulled out, placed with the sofa around which some gather. The door is open and others enter, along the hallway, then another. Let us make our way further along. We become spiders here, to thread, to weave, to mend, to hold together the leftover pieces that is ours and is between, that is with those around who emancipate each other, who find power in the circulation and in the connecting ties that bind and support. That is the disobedient finding of form. The disobedient finding of form. This house, the incomplete that allows us to enter and that we complete again and again, threading, weaving, and which we take with us, pulling these threads with us out the door and then back onto the street. This that we exit with, the body becoming an archive of what is heard and what is passed around, and what continues to tremble, and which we hold onto like a spidery network, this web of relations. Under the breath, breathless, holding back and speaking nonetheless, blue, black, this small gathering into which we may enter, are entering, have entered, around which these thoughts also now work, refusing, listening out and toward, prying open the door, the window, the state, for he, she, the others who are here and there, down the hallway, along the dry path, and further the festival, which we may open, opens, is opening the arm, the muscle, the body, into a paradigm of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for this wonderful performance. We close here. Brandon will be around the next days in his living archive, in the living interactive archive downstairs. So if you want to talk with him or have more questions to this performance, you can go there and meet him. Well, thanks, Brandon, again. Thanks to the technical support. Thanks to the production team. Thanks to the whole CTM family, and thanks to you all for sharing, for coming out, for discussing with us. I wish you a great evening around the festival, and we continue here with the discourse program tomorrow at 2 with our next day on resisting fundamentalism. Thank you.